Hi everyone, my name is Chloe Robertson, and for this project I had the opportunity to interview my very close friend Adrienne Dunn, who is the executive editor of State Press. For those of you who don't know what State Press is, it's a student-run newsroom based in Tempe, Arizona, that focuses on covering ASU's campuses as well as the surrounding communities. Because it's so specific to ASU communities and the surrounding areas, their main competitors are other Arizona-based news organizations such as Arizona Republic. As the executive editor for State Press, Adrienne has a lot of strategic decision making in her day-to-day. So she focuses on hiring and firing processes as well as what actually gets published and what gets cut from the publication. So her strategic decisions largely impact the tone and direction of State Press as a whole. During our conversation, we talked a lot about the external environment's impact on State Press and on other news organizations in general. So for any news organization, but even more so for State Press because they focus so heavily on the ASU community, they have to know what's going on in local politics and local social movements or issues that are arising so that they know what's important to their audience and what they need to cover. They also need to focus on economic factors that could potentially influence how much ad revenue they're able to make. And technology is probably one of the biggest factors that State Press and other news outlets have to consider because they can take advantage of social media to post stories there, and then they're really easily shared with other people through social media. But on the flip side of that, competitors can do the same thing and they can gain an audience and viewership that way. And misinformation can also spread that way. So if individuals are sharing stories that get spread really easily, that's something that news organizations and State Press also have to consider. So how are my competitors using technology? And also how are individuals using the technology, and what kind of decisions am I going to have to make to counteract any misinformation or to ensure that I'm not falling behind my competitors in terms of viewership and reach. So that's really important. And I felt that that really aligned with the PESTLE framework that we reviewed earlier in the semester, and honestly just emphasize the importance of conducting external research and understanding more macroeconomic, or not even just economic, but macro factors that could play into strategic decisions for your own organization. We also talked about access to credible sources as a key resource for State Press. I found this really interesting because when we talked about the resource-based view of the firm in this class, we emphasize the importance of intangible resources over tangible, because intangible resources, they're not as easily shared or sold or traded between firms, so they're a better basis for a competitive advantage. And that rings true for State Press. So Adrienne was talking about how because State Press is a student-run newsroom, they have access to a whole network of people within the ASU community. So other ASU students, ASU faculty, as well as decision makers for ASU, such as President Crow and members of USG. So because State Press has access to all of these sources, they're really able to base their competitive advantage on these credible sources, whereas other news organizations such as Arizona Republic, because they're not Arizona State students, they don't have access to the same type of networks that the employees working at State Press do. So they really take advantage of this and put out information that's especially useful to ASU students because of their network. One final thing that we talked about was the strategy that State Press pursues. So they pursue more of a differentiation / niche strategy. They're really localized, right? So they focus on ASU's campuses, and because of that, they're kind of restricted geographically just to wherever ASU has campuses. But they are not so much concerned with status or exclusivity. They actually try to differentiate based on accessibility and quality. So when we look at accessibility, some other news outlets have paywalls. State Press does not. So State Press doesn't have paywalls. They also are actively working to implement a Spanish column so that they can reach a wider audience. And so this is something they do to increase their accessibility and honestly increase their reach to viewers and to readers. As far as quality goes, State Press employees know that because it is student run and they're all students, they have other classes, other jobs, etc., they probably will not be the first people covering breaking stories. but they can take advantage of their access to credible sources and all of their networks to really dig deeper into any stories that other outlets have maybe published first. So while they might not be the first ones to the scene or the first ones covering a story, they'll likely often have the better story because they take advantage of the resources and the credible sources that they have available to them, and really focus on putting out quality content and making it accessible to everyone. So I really liked talking with Adrienne about this because I know we talked a lot about different strategic directions in our class. And it was cool to see kind of how State Press does pursue a differentiation strategy, and it is limited a little bit by geography as well, so that they're almost a little bit niche as well. I think my main takeaways from my conversation with Adrienne were that it's extremely important to focus on external factors whenever you're making strategic decisions, but on the same page that you need to know that if you're a strategic decision maker of your firm, you probably know the firm better than anyone else. So you need to be able to take what's valid from your external analysis and apply that to your strategic decision making, but also be able to distinguish what's noise and just tune out all of the noise so that you can be confident in your decision making and not fall prey to imposter syndrome. We also talked about the importance of considering long-term impacts versus just short-term. So if State Press focused on just short-term impacts, they would probably pump out a bunch of sensationalist type pieces to boost viewership and readership in the short run and then get more ad revenue. But in the long run, that goes against their differentiation strategy of quality because they're not putting out quality pieces and they lose credibility as a news organization. So they have to make sure that whatever decisions they're making, they do align with their overall strategy and they focus on the long term, not just the short term. So that's something to consider as well. The Spanish column too, while it might require more resources and more employees up front to get the project going, in the long run they're going to have a wider audience, which aligns with their differentiation strategy on accessibility. So all of these lessons and my takeaways from this, I feel like even though they're specific to State Press and to the journalism industry, they can honestly be applied to any field, any industry, anyone who's making a strategic decision within a firm or an organization. So I really hope that it was useful and informative to you because I got a lot out of it and I thought it was really relevant to strategic decision making and honestly will be helpful to me in my future. So I hope it was also useful to all of you. Thank you.